5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start. This case is not merely about a singular act of administrative overreach. Rather, it calls for a deeper reflection on the systemic safeguards that must be reinforced to prevent recurrence of such instances. At its core, the present matter underscores the fragile balance between the authority of the employer and the rights of the employee, particularly when the employer is a public institution that functions under the mandate of fairness, transparency, and justice. It is a settled position in jurisprudence that the power to hire does not automatically translate into the power to dismiss without due procedure. Public employment is governed not only by contract but also by public law principles. These principles demand that the exercise of discretion be accompanied by reason, restraint, and respect for individual dignity. When this discretion becomes arbitrary or opaque, it undermines the very legitimacy of the administrative process. In the present case, the absence of a charge sheet, the lack of inquiry, and the failure to issue even a rudimentary explanation reflect a profound disregard for procedural norms. The rights of an individual in public employment cannot be at the mercy of unilateral decisions that lack transparency and accountability. It is the duty of the institution, being a repository of public trust, to demonstrate higher ethical and procedural standards. Moreover, the unilateral termination, in the absence of any opportunity for the individual to respond, stands in clear violation of the tenets of natural justice. The right to be heard is not a mere formality, it is a fundamental guarantee that lends legitimacy to the outcome of administrative decisions. Any deviation from this principle must be backed by compelling justification, which is conspicuously absent in the case at hand. This court has, on multiple occasions, reiterated the foundational requirement of adherence to fairness in administrative actions. The notion that government or public institutions can summarily terminate employees without process is wholly incompatible with the rule of law. Indeed, where liberty or livelihood is at stake, the standards of procedural compliance must be stringent and not merely illusory. It bears repetition that employment in the public sector is not solely a matter of contract but also carries with it constitutional implications. An arbitrary termination is not merely a breach of terms but may amount to a denial of equal protection and procedural fairness. While private employers may act with a degree of flexibility, public employers are bound by higher standards due to their public character and the constitutional principles they must uphold. It is also important to address the psychological and professional toll of such abrupt terminations. The individual affected is not merely deprived of income but is also subjected to reputational damage, social stigma, and professional uncertainty. This collateral harm cannot be measured solely in monetary terms. It erodes the morale of public service and disincentivizes honest performance if service is made contingent on the whims of those in authority. This court notes with concern the growing trend of informal and off-the-record decisions that affect employment security. Such informalism is antithetical to the established framework of administrative law. If left unchecked, it can lead to a culture where procedure becomes optional and accountability becomes elusive. It is therefore imperative that institutions recognize that discipline and decorum must begin at the level of process, not merely outcome. In determining appropriate relief, this court must weigh both the rights of the individual and the practical considerations facing the institution. The decision to award partial back wages represents a calibrated balance. It acknowledges the loss suffered by the appellant while also taking into account the period of non-service and potential disruption to institutional operations. It is not intended to diminish the wrong suffered but to align the remedy with broader principles of equity. It is further directed that the institution undertake an internal review of its procedures to ensure compliance with established norms in future cases of disciplinary or administrative action. Mechanisms must be instituted to document and record all stages of employment decisions, particularly those that have adverse consequences. Periodic training of administrative officers on procedural fairness and human resource management must be encouraged to build a culture of lawful decision-making. This court also recommends that supervisory authorities take cognizance of such lapses and issue appropriate guidelines to subordinate entities. Uniformity in procedure not only safeguards employees, but also strengthens institutional credibility. Institutions must remember that the power to govern carries with it a responsibility to govern fairly, justly, and transparently. The decision in this case may serve as a precedent for similar instances where public employees are denied procedural protection. However, each case must be examined on its own merits. While the court must remain vigilant against arbitrary action, it must also be cautious not to overreach or substitute its discretion for that of the administrative authority unless the latter's action is patently illegal or unjust. The reinstatement of the appellant should not be viewed as a punitive measure against the institution but as a necessary correction of an unfair outcome. The purpose of judicial review is not to administer the public service but to ensure that those who do are held accountable to law and to conscience. In performing this function, the court reinforces the boundaries within which administrative action must be conducted. This case illustrates the critical importance of documentation, reasoning, and accountability in public administration. Absence of these elements transforms what could have been a lawful process into an exercise in arbitrariness. No administrative body is exempt from the obligation to act justly, and no decision affecting livelihood can be sustained unless it passes the test of reasonableness. Before parting with this matter, this court places on record its appreciation for the manner in which the appellant pursued the remedy not through confrontation, but through legal channels. This reinforces the strength of constitutional remedies and underscores the importance of institutional redress over personal retaliation. It is this recourse to law that strengthens democracy and maintains public faith in the justice system. Stop.